At 80, she spent her last $200 on a ruined lot. Her dog refused to leave one spot. The gravel lot looked dead under the afternoon sun. Cracked concrete, rusted beams, weeds pushing through everything. People had laughed when she bought it. Now, standing alone at the edge of it, Evelyn noticed something wasn't right. Her German shepherd hadn't moved in minutes, just staring at the ground like it was trying to tell her something. What would you do if your last money led you to a place like this? The bench was colder than it looked. Evelyn Brooks shifted slightly, not enough to make a sound, just enough to ease the pressure in her lower back. The metal had been sitting in the shade all morning, holding on to the chill from the night. It crept through her coat, thin at the elbows, worn smooth at the sleeves. She didn't move again after that. In her hands, she held the envelope. It was an old utility bill she'd folded over twice, the edges softened from being opened and closed too many times. Inside it was everything she had left. $200. She slid the bills out slowly, one at a time, her fingers careful, almost respectful. Tens and twenties, no hundreds. She counted once, then again. Not because she thought it would change, just to hear the numbers in her head. 20, 40, 60. Her voice didn't come out. The counting stayed inside. A gust of wind moved through the parking lot, carrying dust and the faint smell of hot asphalt. Somewhere behind her, a truck engine idled too long, the vibration humming through the ground. Voices rose and fell around her, men mostly, boots on gravel, laughter that came easy, the kind of laughter that didn't need permission. Told you that one's worth at least 10 grand if the wiring's still there. Nah, I already checked. It's stripped clean, doesn't matter. Land's land. Evelyn didn't look up. She kept her eyes on the envelope, folding the money back inside, pressing the crease flat with her thumb like she'd done 1,000 times before, with bills, receipts, grocery lists. At her feet, Rusty lay stretched along the edge of the bench. A German shepherd, 8 years old, his coat darker along the spine, fading to a dusty brown near his legs. He should have been resting. That was his habit. Find shade. Stay still. Save energy. But he wasn't resting. His head was up, ears forward, eyes moving. Not fast, not nervous, just watching. He tracked people the way some dogs tracked birds. Quiet, focused, as if every movement meant something. A man walked past too close, boots crunching on loose gravel. Rusty's eyes followed him until he passed, then shifted back to the open doors of the auction office. Evelyn noticed. She always noticed. "You see something?" she murmured, her voice low, almost swallowed by the air. Rusty didn't look at her, didn't wag his tail, just kept watching. Evelyn let out a slow breath and leaned back against the bench. The building in front of her was older than most things in Millridge. Brick, faded to a dull brown, the corners chipped, the windows lined with dust that never quite got cleaned off. A hand-painted sign hung above the door. County Surplus and Property Auction. The letters were uneven, one corner peeling. She had passed this building before, many times. Never thought she'd sit outside it. Not like this. A woman in a bright blouse stepped out of the doorway, fanning herself with a folded paper. She glanced around, her eyes moving quickly over the crowd. They skipped right past Evelyn. Not deliberately, just the way people do. Evelyn didn't mind. Or maybe she did. It was hard to tell the difference anymore. She adjusted the strap of her bag, pulling it closer to her side. Canvas, faded green. The zipper didn't close all the way unless you pulled it just right. Everything she owned was inside. 2 changes of clothes, a photograph wrapped in a handkerchief, a small tin box with things she hadn't thrown away. And the envelope. Always the envelope. Rusty shifted suddenly. Not a full movement, just a tightening, His front paws pressed slightly into the ground, his shoulders lifting a fraction. Evelyn followed his line of sight. The doorway. More people were gathering inside now. The murmur of voices thickened. Someone laughed louder than the rest, sharp and short. Rusty's ears twitched, then stilled. Evelyn watched him for a moment longer. Something about it felt different. Not fear, not excitement. Just attention. Pure, steady attention. She reached down, her fingers brushing the fur behind his ear. "You always know before I do," she said softly. This time, Rusty turned his head, just enough to meet her eyes. For a second, that was all there was. No noise, no heat, just that look. Then he turned back again. The door creaked open wider. A man stepped out, holding a clipboard. "All right, folks," he called, voice carrying easily across the lot. "We're about to get started. If you're here for the auction, head on in." Chairs scraped inside. Boots moved. The crowd shifted as one. Evelyn didn't stand right away. She watched the others go first, watched how easily they moved, how naturally they belonged in that motion. Then the space around her thinned. The bench felt colder, the air quieter. She looked down at the envelope in her hand, pressed it once more. $200. That was all. If she walked away now, she could stretch it. A week, maybe 2, if she was careful. Find another place to sit, another place to wait. The thought settled in her chest, heavy and slow. Then Rusty stood up. No hesitation, no command. He stepped forward, just a few paces, then stopped. Looked back at her. Not pulling, not urging, just waiting. Evelyn exhaled through her nose. A small sound, almost a laugh, but not quite. "All right," she said. She pushed herself up from the bench, her knees stiff, her hand resting briefly on the metal for support. The world tilted for a second, then steadied. She adjusted her coat, lifted the bag onto her shoulder, and stepped forward. Rusty moved beside her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him through the fabric of her coat. At the doorway, she paused, just for a second. Inside, the room was already filling. Rows of folding chairs, people leaning forward, papers in hand, eyes sharp. Evelyn took one last breath. Then she walked in. Because staying outside was the same as disappearing. And she wasn't ready for that. Not yet. The thought followed her inside. The room smelled faintly of paper and dust. Old wood. Coffee that had been sitting too long. People filled the folding chairs in loose rows, some leaning forward, others relaxed, as if this was routine for them. Evelyn stayed near the back. She didn't sit right away. Rusty stood close to her leg, his body angled slightly toward the door, like he was keeping track of the way out. The man with the clipboard began speaking, his voice steady, practiced, explaining rules, payment terms, final sales. Evelyn heard the words, but they didn't settle. Her mind drifted. Back. The house had been quiet that morning, too quiet. Evelyn remembered standing in the kitchen, her hand resting on the edge of the sink. The sunlight came in through the small window above it, catching dust in the air, the same way it had for years. Nothing had looked different, not at first. Daniel had come by the night before, brought groceries, spoke gently, smiled more than usual. "You don't need to worry about anything anymore, Aunt Evelyn," he had said, placing a bag on the counter. "I've been talking to a lawyer. We can make things easier for you." Easier. That word had sounded good at the time. She had nodded. She trusted him. He was her sister's boy. He knew things she didn't. Paperwork, taxes, all the things that had started to feel heavier over the years. She had signed where he told her to sign. He'd pointed with a pen. Patient. Careful. Just here. And here. She hadn't read everything. The letters had looked smaller than they used to. And Daniel had been right there, explaining, reassuring. It just transfers things so I can handle them for you, he said. It's temporary. Temporary. Evelyn shifted her weight slightly where she stood in the auction room. Rusty's ears flicked once. The man at the front called out the first item. A vehicle. Bidding started fast. Numbers jumping. Voices confident. Evelyn barely heard it. 3 weeks later, the house had felt different. Not empty. Just rearranged. Her things were still there, but some of them weren't where she had left them. A chair moved. A drawer half open. Daniel stood in the hallway that day. He didn't sit. Didn't take off his coat. He spoke in the same calm voice. We need to talk. Evelyn had stood across from him, her hands resting lightly against each other. Waiting. There's been a change, he said. The words had come out carefully, like he'd practiced them. The house, it's already been transferred. Evelyn blinked. I thought, you said, I know what I said. Daniel cut in gently, too quickly. But this is better. For both of us. For both of us. The phrase hung there. Evelyn looked past him, down the hallway. The walls were the same. The floorboards still creaked in the same spots. Nothing had changed. And yet everything had. When do I leave? She asked. Her voice surprised her. It didn't shake. Daniel hesitated, just for a second. There's a place I can help you with, he said. Temporary housing. Just until we figure out something more permanent. She nodded slowly. Not because she agreed. Because there wasn't anything else to do. Rusty had known before she did. That morning, when she reached for the door to let him out, he hadn't moved. Just stood there. Watching her, she opened the door wider. Go on, she said. He didn't. Instead, he stepped back. A low sound rose in his throat. Not loud, not aggressive, but steady. Evelyn turned then, looked at the hallway, at Daniel, at the boxes stacked near the wall she hadn't noticed before. The feeling came all at once, cold, not panic, not anger, just understanding. Back in the auction room, a burst of laughter broke out from the front row. Someone had made a comment about a piece of land. Evelyn's attention flickered back. The man with the clipboard moved on to the next item. Papers shuffled. Chairs creaked. Rusty shifted again, sitting this time, but his posture stayed upright. Alert. Always alert. The taxi had arrived in the afternoon. Daniel stood on the porch while the driver loaded her bag into the trunk. You'll be more comfortable there, he said. Evelyn stood beside him. She looked at the yard, the small patch of grass she had kept trimmed, the flower bed along the fence, now bare, the front step where she used to sit in the evenings. She didn't touch anything, didn't walk back inside. She knew better. Rusty jumped into the back seat before she did. When she climbed in, he pressed close against her leg, his body tense. The car pulled away. Evelyn didn't turn her head. Not once. Next item, the auctioneer called. His voice cut clean through the room. Evelyn blinked. The memory faded, but not completely. It settled somewhere behind her ribs. Still there. Still quiet. She looked down at Rusty. He glanced up at her for a moment, then back toward the front. Watching. Waiting. Evelyn took a slow breath. Her hand moved to the envelope in her coat pocket. $200. That was all that remained from everything she had built, everything she had trusted. She straightened slightly. Not much. Just enough. The room buzzed around her. Voices, numbers, movement, and somewhere inside it, she stayed still, holding her place, holding what was left, without noise, without protest. Just there. That was how it had been since the taxi door closed. Evelyn remembered the ride more by sound than sight. The steady hum of the engine, the faint rattle somewhere near the back wheel. Rusty's breathing, close, measured, pressed against her leg. The driver didn't say much, asked for the address, nodded when she gave it, turned the radio low, then off completely after a few minutes, like he could feel something in the back seat that didn't need noise. They drove through parts of Millridge Evelyn hadn't seen in years. Old storefronts with faded signs, empty lots where buildings used to stand, a factory shell with broken windows catching the light like dull glass. The town had changed, or maybe it had always been this way. She just hadn't needed to notice before. The shelter sat near the edge of it all, a low rectangular building with peeling white paint and a narrow parking lot that held 3 cars and a dented van. A chain-link fence ran along one side, bent inward in places, like it had been pushed too many times. The driver pulled up to the curb. "That's it," he said, glancing at her in the rearview mirror. Evelyn nodded. Rusty stepped out first. He didn't wander, didn't sniff the ground like he usually would in a new place. He stood close, eyes scanning. The front door creaked when she pushed it open. Inside, the air was cooler. Not fresh, just cooler. The smell came next, detergent, layered over something older. Damp fabric, closed rooms, a trace of bleach that never quite masked what was underneath. A woman sat behind a desk near the entrance, flipping through a clipboard. She looked up when Evelyn stepped in. "Name?" she asked. "Evelyn Brooks." The woman nodded, found something on the page, and tapped it once with her pen. "Rooms shared," she said. "You'll get a bed. Keep your belongings with you." Her eyes flicked to Rusty. "Dog stays with you, no trouble, no issues." "He won't cause any," Evelyn said. The woman shrugged, already moving on. "Hallway to the left, second door." That was it. No questions, no welcome. Just direction. Evelyn followed the hallway, her steps slow, the floor slightly uneven beneath her shoes. The room was larger than she expected. 8 beds, metal frames, thin mattresses, blankets folded at the foot. Curtains hung between some of them, half drawn, offering just enough privacy to pretend. A woman sat on one of the beds near the window, staring down at her hands. Another lay on her side, facing the wall. No one looked up when Evelyn entered. Rusty stepped inside carefully. He paused near the doorway. Waited. Evelyn chose the bed closest to the corner, set her bag down. Sat. The mattress dipped more than she expected, the springs underneath shifting with a quiet creak. Rusty lay down immediately beside the bed, his body angled toward the room. Watching. Always watching. Night came differently there. Not with silence, but with layers of small sounds, pipes knocking somewhere in the walls, water running briefly, then stopping, a cough from across the room, the soft rustle of blankets. Breathing. So many different rhythms of breathing. Evelyn lay on her back, her hands folded lightly over her stomach, her eyes open in the dark. The ceiling above her was stained in places, the paint uneven. A faint line ran from one corner to the other, like a crack that had been covered but never fixed. Rusty didn't sleep deeply. She could tell. Every time a sound shifted, his head lifted slightly, ears moving, then settling again, but never fully resting. At one point, a door slammed somewhere down the hall, sharp, sudden. Rusty was on his feet before the echo faded. A low sound rose in his chest, not loud, but ready. Evelyn reached down, her hand finding the top of his head in the dark. "It's all right," she whispered. He stayed standing for a moment longer. Then slowly, he lay back down. But closer this time, pressed against the side of the bed. The days settled into a pattern, if it could be called that. Morning came early, light slipping through the thin curtains, pale and uneven. People moved quietly at first, then more quickly. Some left, some stayed. Evelyn didn't ask questions. She folded her clothes carefully each morning, smoothed the blanket, adjusted the strap of her bag. Small things, things she could control. Rusty followed her when she stepped outside. The air felt different there, more open, but still heavy. The edge of town didn't carry the same movement as the center. It lingered, held on to things longer than it should. Rusty would stand beside her, facing outward, watching the road, watching the fence, watching nothing in particular, or maybe something she couldn't see. Evelyn began to notice it more. That focus. It wasn't nervous energy. It wasn't confusion. It was direction. Like he was waiting, but for what, she couldn't say. One afternoon, she sat on the low concrete step outside the shelter, her hands resting in her lap. The sun was high, too bright, the kind of heat that made everything feel still. Rusty paced. Not far, just a few steps one way, then back again. Then he stopped, looked out toward the road, stayed like that longer than usual. Evelyn followed his gaze. There was nothing there, just the empty stretch of pavement leading back toward town. A car passed in the distance, then silence again. Rusty didn't move. Evelyn frowned slightly. "You see something?" she asked. No answer. Just that stillness, that attention. After a while, he sat down again, but the feeling stayed, something unfinished. That night, Evelyn lay awake longer than usual. The sounds were the same, the room unchanged, but something inside her had shifted. Not hope, not yet, just awareness. She turned her head slightly, looking down at Rusty. He was awake, eyes open, looking toward the door, not restless, not anxious, just waiting. Evelyn watched him for a long moment. Then she closed her eyes. Not to sleep, just to rest them. Because whatever it was, whatever he was sensing, hadn't happened yet. But it was coming. She could feel that much. Even if she didn't understand it. Not yet. The next morning came too early. The shelter stirred before the sun had fully settled over the rooftops. Someone coughed in the corner. A bed frame creaked. Water ran briefly in the sink down the hall. Evelyn sat up slowly. Her joints resisted at first, then gave way in small increments. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and paused there, letting her body catch up. Rusty was already awake. He stood near the door, not pacing this time, just standing, looking. Evelyn followed his gaze, but there was nothing unusual to see. The same hallway, the same dim light, the same quiet shuffle of people moving through another morning. Still, something in him hadn't settled. She reached for her bag. The envelope was still there. $200. She pressed it flat once more. then slipped it back inside. "All right," she murmured, almost to herself. Rusty turned his head slightly at the sound of her voice. They stepped outside together. The air carried that dry, dusty smell again, like the town hadn't seen rain in a while. The sky stretched pale and wide above the rooftops, already warming. Evelyn stood for a moment on the concrete step. She didn't have a plan. Not really. But the thought of staying there all day, sitting, waiting, listening to the same sounds, felt heavier than walking. So she walked. Rusty moved beside her, close enough that his shoulder brushed against her leg now and then. They followed the road back toward town, past the empty lots, past the old factory shell, past the quiet storefronts that didn't open as often as they used to. The auction building came into view before she realized where her feet had taken her. Same faded sign, same cracked pavement, same doorway. People were already gathering again. Different faces, mostly. A few she recognized from the day before. Boots, hats, clipboards, men talking in low voices, already measuring things in their heads. Evelyn slowed. She hadn't planned to come back. But she didn't turn around either. Rusty stopped, not in hesitation, in attention. His body angled toward the building, ears forward. That same stillness. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "Well," she said under her breath, "we're here." They moved closer. No one paid them much attention. A few quick glances, then eyes shifting away. The clipboard man stood near the entrance again, flipping through papers. "Second round today," he called out. "Additional properties, leftover lots. Same rules." Leftover. The word stayed with Evelyn. Inside, the room felt more crowded than the day before. Hotter. The air thick with movement and voices. Evelyn found a place along the wall this time. She didn't sit, just stood, her bag resting against her side. Rusty sat beside her, still, watching. The auction began. Items moved quickly again. Equipment, vehicles, small parcels of land. Voices rose. Bids jumped. Evelyn listened this time, not fully, but more than before. She watched how people reacted. When they leaned forward, when they hesitated, when they lost interest. There was a rhythm to it, a pattern. Then the pace shifted. The clipboard man cleared his throat slightly. "All right," he said. "Next section, remaining properties. These are as is, no guarantees." A few people shifted in their seats. Less interest now, less energy. He read the next listing. Lot number 11. A pause. Half acre. Old industrial site. Structural collapse. No utilities. Minimum bid. $200. A short laugh came from the second row. Someone muttered, "That place is a sinkhole." Another voice added, "You couldn't pay me to take it." Evelyn didn't move, but her eyes lifted slightly. Rusty stood. Not abruptly. Just stood. Evelyn looked down at him, then back at the front. The man waited. 200. Any interest? Silence. A few people shook their heads. Others looked away. Done with it before it even began. Evelyn felt the envelope in her coat. Her fingers pressed lightly against it. 200. Everything she had. The room blurred for a second, not in sight, but in feeling. Voices fading, edges softening, and in that quiet space something else surfaced. Her father's voice. Low, steady. From years ago. "Don't look at what people say. Something is. he had told her once, standing beside a cracked foundation. Look at how it was built. That tells you what it can be. Evelyn blinked. The room came back. The laughter. The indifference. The way everyone had already dismissed it. Rusty took one step forward, then stopped, looked back at her. Not pulling. Not urging. Just there. Waiting. Evelyn's hand moved. Slowly. She raised it. Not high. Just enough. The man at the front squinted slightly. You bidding, ma'am? A few heads turned. Not many. Just enough. Evelyn nodded once. 200, she said. Her voice came out quieter than she expected, but clear. The room held still for a moment. Then someone let out a short, surprised chuckle. Let her have it, a voice said from the side. No one else is touching that, another added. The auctioneer glanced around. Any other bids? Nothing. Going once. Rusty didn't move. Going twice. Evelyn's hand lowered slowly. Sold. The sound of the gavel wasn't loud, but it carried. Lot 11, $200. The man made a note on his paper. Just like that. It was done. Evelyn stood there for a second longer. Then she exhaled. A breath she didn't realize she'd been holding. Rusty stepped back to her side. Close again. She reached down, her fingers brushing along his neck. All right, she said softly. The words felt different now, not certain, but not empty either. Around her, the room moved on. Another item, another bid, another laugh. But Evelyn didn't stay. She turned, walked toward the door. The sunlight outside hit her eyes for a moment. Bright, sharp, real. She stepped onto the pavement. The envelope was lighter now, empty. In her hand, a folded receipt. Lot number 11. Half an acre. Nothing anyone wanted, Rusty stood beside her, facing the road ahead. Evelyn looked down at the paper once, then tucked it carefully into her bag. Let's go see it, she said. And this time, Rusty moved first. He didn't rush. Didn't pull ahead like a dog chasing something he didn't understand. He walked with purpose. Straight down the edge of the road, past the auction building, past the row of parked trucks and faded storefronts. His stride was steady, his head level, ears forward. Evelyn followed. She didn't question it. Not out loud. The receipt in her bag felt heavier than it should have. A thin piece of paper, folded twice, but it carried something she couldn't name yet. Half an acre. Somewhere at the edge of town. She hadn't even seen it. The road shifted as they walked. Concrete gave way to patches of cracked asphalt, then to gravel that crunched underfoot. The buildings thinned out. The noise of town, what little there was, faded behind them. The air changed. Drier. Stiller. Rusty didn't slow. If anything, he became more focused. Evelyn noticed how he began to drift slightly ahead now, then pause, looking back just long enough to make sure she was still there before continuing, like he already knew where they were going. After nearly 20 minutes, the road narrowed further, bending slightly toward a line of overgrown brush. A rusted sign leaned crooked near the edge of a dirt turnoff. The lettering was barely readable. Property. County Holdings. The rest had been scratched away by time. Rusty stopped. Right at the entrance. His body stiffened slightly. Evelyn stepped up beside him. "This is it?" she murmured. There was no clear boundary, just a break in the brush, a faint path where tires might have passed years ago. Beyond it, something collapsed. She stepped forward slowly. The ground shifted under her shoe, not loose but uneven. Weeds had pushed through everything, tall and dry, brushing against her coat as she moved. The smell hit her next. Dust, old metal, and something else underneath. Not rot. Not exactly. Just stillness. The remains of the structure came into view piece by piece. Concrete slabs tilted at odd angles. A section of wall still standing, jagged at the top where it had broken off. Rusted beams half buried in dirt. It wasn't a building anymore. Just what was left after something stopped being used. Evelyn stood there for a moment, taking it in. This was what she had bought. $200. Everything she had. A place no one else wanted. Behind her, the road was quiet. No cars, no voices. Just wind moving lightly through dry grass. Rusty stepped forward, then stopped. His head lowered slightly. He sniffed once, then again, slow, measured. Evelyn watched him. He moved a few steps to the left, paused, sniffed again, then circled. Not wide, tight, focused. He returned to the same spot. Again, and again. Evelyn felt something shift in her chest. Not fear. Not yet. Just attention. "Rusty," she called softly. He didn't look up. Instead, he pawed lightly at the ground. Not digging, just touching. Then he stepped back, looked at her. That look again. The same one from outside the auction building. The same one from the shelter. Waiting. Evelyn stepped closer. The ground there looked no different than anywhere else. Cracked concrete. A thin layer of dirt. Small stones scattered unevenly. She pressed her foot down lightly. Nothing. Just solid. She shifted her weight. Pressed harder. Still nothing. She frowned slightly. "You sure about this?" she murmured. Rusty didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched her. Evelyn stepped off, then back onto the spot again, adjusting her position slightly. This time, something changed. The sound. It wasn't loud, not obvious, but it was there. A dull, hollow tone beneath the pressure of her weight. She froze, lifted her foot, pressed again. The same sound. Not solid, not like the rest. Different. Evelyn looked down, then around. Everything else felt the same, except here. Rusty lowered himself slowly to the ground, right over the spot, not lying fully, just settling, as if claiming it. Evelyn's breath slowed. She crouched carefully, her knees protesting as she lowered herself closer to the surface. Her fingers brushed the concrete, rough, worn, but intact. She tapped it lightly with her knuckles, once, twice. The sound echoed back, soft, contained, hollow. Evelyn pulled her hand back slowly. Her eyes stayed on the ground. Rusty let out a low, quiet sound. Not a growl, not a warning. Something else. Something closer to certainty. Evelyn sat back on her heels. The wind moved again, carrying dust across the lot. The broken wall cast a long shadow over part of the ground. Everything looked the same, but it didn't feel the same anymore. She stood slowly, brushing dirt from her hands. Her gaze returned to the spot. Rusty stayed there, still, focused. Evelyn looked out over the rest of the lot. The collapsed beams, the cracked slabs, the weeds pushing through every open space. Then back to Rusty, to the place he refused to leave. "All right," she said quietly. Not to him, not entirely. More like she was saying it to the moment itself. She adjusted the strap of her bag, took one step back, then another. Her eyes never left the ground. The hollow sound stayed with her, echoing in her mind. Not loud, but steady, like something just beneath the surface, waiting. Rusty didn't follow right away. He stayed where he was, watching the spot. Then finally, after a long pause, he stood and moved toward her. But even as he walked beside her again, his head turned back once more, just for a second, as if making sure it would still be there when they returned. Evelyn noticed that. And this time, she didn't question it. Evelyn didn't sleep much that night. The shelter settled into its usual rhythm. Quiet voices, distant movement, the low hum of pipes behind the walls. But her mind stayed on that one place, that one sound, hollow. It didn't match the rest of the ground. She turned slightly on the thin mattress, her hand hanging over the edge until her fingers brushed against Rusty's back. He was awake again. She could feel it in the way his body held tension, even when still. "Tomorrow," she whispered. Rusty's ear twitched once. That was all. Morning came slow and gray. Clouds had rolled in overnight, dulling the sunlight and cooling the air just enough to make the town feel different. Evelyn didn't linger. She packed her bag carefully, making sure the envelope and the receipt were still where she left them. Not that they mattered now, not the way they had yesterday, but she kept them close anyway. Habit. Rusty was already at the door, waiting. They walked the same road again, past the broken factory windows, past the empty storefronts, past the place where the pavement gave way to gravel. The town looked quieter than before. Or maybe she was just listening harder. When they reached the lot, Rusty didn't hesitate. He moved straight to the same spot. Same path. Same pace, like nothing had changed. Evelyn followed more slowly this time. Her eyes stayed on the ground as she walked, studying the surface in a way she hadn't before. She noticed the cracks now, how some ran deep, how others stopped abruptly. She noticed where weeds grew thicker, where the soil seemed looser. But when she reached Rusty, it all narrowed again, to that one place. He stood over it, then stepped aside, giving her room. Evelyn took a breath, then stepped forward. She placed her foot carefully, pressed down. The sound came back, soft, contained, hollow. Her chest tightened slightly. She shifted her weight, pressed again. Same result, different from everything else around it. Rusty lowered himself to the ground once more, settling into that same position as yesterday, directly over the spot. Not moving. Evelyn crouched down slowly, her joints stiff from the cold morning air. She placed both hands on the surface this time, felt it. Cold. Slightly uneven. She tapped it again, this time moving her knuckles in a small circle, testing different points. Solid. Solid. Then there. That spot. The sound changed. Not dramatically, but enough. Enough to know. Evelyn leaned back slightly, her brow furrowing. "This isn't right," she murmured. Her voice sounded louder out here. Too loud. She glanced around instinctively, but the lot was empty. No one had followed. No one cared enough to. Rusty let out a low breath. Not a warning. Not a signal. Just there. Present. Evelyn sat back fully this time, resting her weight on her heels. Her eyes moved over the area again. Concrete. Cracked. Weathered. But what if it wasn't all the same underneath? Her father's voice came back again. Not loud, just steady. Foundations don't lie. If something sounds wrong, it is. She nodded slightly, almost without realizing it. All right, she said again. The word felt firmer now, less uncertain. She stood slowly and looked around for something she could use. There wasn't much. A piece of rusted metal near the edge of the lot. A broken length of wood, half buried in weeds. She moved toward it, her steps careful, then bent down to pull it free. It resisted at first, caught under debris, but with a bit of effort, it came loose. Rough, heavy enough. She carried it back. Rusty watched her the entire time. When she returned, he shifted just enough to give her space again. Evelyn positioned the wood over the spot, then pressed down. Once. A dull sound echoed back. She lifted it slightly, pressed again. The same hollow tone, clearer this time. She moved the wood a few inches to the side. Pressed. Solid. Back again. Hollow. Her breath slowed. Not from fear, from focus. This wasn't random. It wasn't imagination. Something was different here. Rusty stood up slowly. He stepped forward and placed one paw directly on the spot, pressing down. Then he looked at her. That look again. Evelyn exhaled slowly through her nose. You're sure? She said quietly. Not a question. A statement. Rusty didn't move. The wind shifted slightly, brushing through the weeds and carrying that same dry scent across the lot. But now there was something else. Faint. Barely there. Cooler air. Not strong enough to feel, but enough to notice. Evelyn straightened, her back protesting as she stood. She looked around the lot again, this time not as someone who had just arrived, but as someone trying to understand what she had already stepped into. Collapsed beams, broken slabs, old structure, industrial. Things built to last, things built to hold. Her eyes returned to the ground, to the place where the sound didn't belong. This was something, she said under her breath. Rusty's ears flicked. She stepped back slowly, not leaving, just giving herself space to think. The piece of wood remained in her hand, its rough edge pressing into her palm. She looked at it, then at the ground again. Layer by layer. That's how things were built. That's how they were uncovered. Evelyn nodded once. A small movement, but certain. We'll come back, she said. Rusty didn't follow immediately. He stayed at the spot for a moment longer, looking down. Then finally, he turned and walked toward her. But as they left, Evelyn felt it, that quiet pull behind her, not from fear, not from doubt, from something unfinished. The sound stayed in her head, hollow, steady, like a space that had been waiting, longer than she could imagine. And now, it had been found. Evelyn didn't wait long. The next morning, she returned with more than just her hands. The shelter's maintenance room had a loose system. Things came and went, rarely tracked, rarely questioned. A shovel leaned against the wall near the back door. Its handle was worn smooth from years of use. She picked it up without asking. No one stopped her. Rusty walked beside her as they left, his pace steady, his focus unchanged. The sky was clearer today. Sunlight stretched across the road, warming the pavement and bringing out the dull color of the abandoned buildings they passed. The town looked quieter than usual, or maybe it was just earlier than most people cared to be outside. Either way, it gave her space. By the time they reached the lot, the air had already begun to heat. Rusty moved ahead again, straight to the spot. No hesitation. No searching. Evelyn stepped into the overgrown entrance, the shovel resting against her shoulder. The weeds brushed against her legs as she moved, dry and brittle. She stopped where he stopped, looked down. The ground hadn't changed. Still cracked, still quiet. But now she knew what to listen for. She set the shovel down and pressed her foot again. That same hollow sound answered back. Steady, certain. Evelyn nodded once. Then she began. The first layer came easy. Loose dirt, small stones, debris that had settled over time. The shovel scraped against the surface with a dull, steady rhythm. Each movement slow, deliberate. She didn't rush. Couldn't. Her body reminded her of its limits with every bend, every lift. But she kept going. Rusty stayed close. Not in the way he had before. Not circling. Not searching. He stood just to the side now, watching her work. His ears moved with each scrape of the shovel, each shift in sound. Time stretched. The sun climbed higher. Sweat gathered along Evelyn's back, beneath the thin fabric of her shirt. She paused once, leaning on the shovel, catching her breath. Looked down. The surface had changed. Less dirt now, more solid. Something beneath. She knelt slowly, brushing the area with her hand. Concrete, not the same as the cracked surface around it. Smoother, intentional. Evelyn's fingers traced along the edge. There. A line. Faint, but straight. She cleared more dirt. Her movements slower now, more careful. The shape began to form. Not random, not broken. A boundary. Rusty stepped closer. His nose lowered, hovering just above the surface. He sniffed once, then again. His body tensed slightly, not in fear, but in recognition. Evelyn sat back on her heels, staring at what she had uncovered. A section of concrete. Different from the rest. Defined. Measured. She picked up the shovel again and worked along the edge, widening the cleared space. It took time, more than she expected. But slowly, the shape revealed itself. A rectangle, roughly 4 feet across, maybe 5. Set into the ground, separate from everything else. Evelyn's grip tightened on the shovel. This was placed here, she said under her breath. Not guessed, known. Rusty stepped back slightly, then sat, watching, waiting. The next part was harder. The edges were packed tight with dirt that had hardened over time. The shovel helped, but only so much. Evelyn switched to her hands, digging, pulling, clearing the seams. Her fingers ached, her nails filled with dirt. But she didn't stop. Not now. Not when she was this close. Finally, she saw it. Metal, dull, rust-colored, running along one side of the concrete. Evelyn froze for a moment, then leaned closer. She brushed away more dirt, revealing it fully. A handle. Flat against the surface. Thick, heavy, old. Rusty stood immediately. His posture changed. Not tense, but alert in a different way, as if something had shifted. Evelyn wiped her hands against her coat, leaving streaks of dirt behind. Her breath slowed. She reached out, wrapped her fingers around the metal. Cold, even in the heat. She pulled. Nothing. It didn't move. She adjusted her grip, pulled again, harder this time. Still nothing. The metal groaned faintly, but held. Evelyn let go, her chest rising and falling more quickly now. She stepped back. Looked at it. Years, maybe decades, sealed shut. Rusty stepped forward, closer than before. He placed one paw gently on the edge of the concrete, then another, standing over it, looking down, then up at her. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "All right," she said. She stepped forward again. This time she braced herself, feet planted, both hands on the handle. She pulled. The resistance was immediate, heavy, unyielding. Her arms trembled slightly from the strain. She stopped, breathed, tried again. Nothing. She stepped back once more. Frustration flickered through her, quick and sharp, but it didn't stay. She looked around, spotted a piece of broken metal rod near the edge of the lot. She walked over, picked it up, tested its weight. Good enough. Returning to the hatch, she wedged the rod under the handle, adjusted it carefully, then pressed down. At first, nothing. Then a sound. Faint, deep. A crack. Rusty's ears shot forward. Evelyn froze. The sound echoed slightly beneath her feet. Not loud, but unmistakable. Something had shifted. She pressed again. Harder. The rod bent slightly, but held. Another crack. This one louder. The seal was breaking. Evelyn dropped the rod and grabbed the handle again. Both hands, all her strength, she pulled. The metal lifted, just slightly. Enough for air to escape. It came up slow at first, then a little more. A thin gap opened between the concrete and the frame, and from that gap, something rose. Cold air, sharp, out of place. It brushed against her face, cutting through the heat of the day like it didn't belong there. Evelyn stepped back instinctively. Her heart quickened. Rusty didn't move. He stood there, still, focused, watching the opening. Evelyn stared at it, at the gap, at the darkness beneath. Her hands trembled slightly, not from weakness, from the realization. "This isn't just ground," she whispered. No answer came, just that steady flow of cold air. From somewhere below. Waiting. Evelyn took one slow step forward, her eyes fixed on the opening. The space beneath the hatch was black, deep, unseen. She placed her hand on the edge again. Not pulling now, just resting, feeling the difference. Above and below. Rusty lowered his head slightly. Not in fear, not in warning, but in attention. The kind that doesn't leave room for doubt. Evelyn swallowed, then said, quietly, "We're not done." And this time, she meant it. Evelyn didn't close the hatch. She stood there for a long moment, staring at the narrow opening, feeling that cold air brush against her face again. It carried a different weight than anything above ground. Still, undisturbed, old. Rusty didn't step back. He leaned forward slightly, nose hovering just above the gap, drawing in the scent carefully. Not frantic, not alarmed, curious. Then he looked at her. Evelyn exhaled slowly. "All right," she said again. She widened the opening first. Carefully, the hatch resisted at every inch, its weight fighting her, the hinges stiff with age, but the seal had already broken. With patience, with pressure, it gave way little by little, until finally, it opened enough. Enough for her to see. Stone. Steps. Leading down, Evelyn felt her chest tighten. Not fear. Something sharper. Something closer to disbelief. "This was built," she whispered. Her voice seemed to fall into the opening and disappear. Rusty shifted his weight, then stepped back slightly, giving her room. He didn't go first. That wasn't like him. He waited. Evelyn wiped her hands on her coat again, then reached into her bag. Her fingers found the small flashlight she had kept for years. The plastic casing was scratched, the switch stiff, but it still worked. A thin beam of light cut through the darkness. She aimed it downward. The steps were real. 4, maybe 5 visible from where she stood. Stone, worn at the edges, set evenly, deliberate. Evelyn swallowed. Her hand tightened around the flashlight. "Stay close," she said quietly. Rusty didn't respond with movement, but he stayed, exactly where she needed him. Evelyn placed one foot onto the first step, tested it. Solid. She shifted her weight, then lowered herself down. The air changed immediately. Cooler, drier, different from the surface. Each step creaked slightly under her weight. Not from weakness, but from time. The beam of light moved with her, sweeping slowly across the walls. Not dirt, not packed earth, concrete, reinforced, straight lines, sharp edges. This wasn't a hole. It was a structure. Evelyn reached the bottom, paused, let her eyes adjust. The flashlight only revealed a narrow slice at a time, but it was enough. The space opened outward, wider than she expected, long. The beam passed over metal shelves along one side, then another. Boxes stacked carefully, containers sealed. Nothing scattered, nothing collapsed. Everything in place, as if it had been closed and never touched again. Rusty stepped down behind her. His paws made soft, controlled sounds on the stone steps. When he reached the bottom, he didn't rush ahead. He stayed near her side. His nose moved slowly through the air, taking in everything. But he didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't show fear. That told her more than anything else. "This was meant to last," Evelyn said under her breath. Her voice sounded smaller here, contained. The flashlight moved again, across the floor. Concrete. Clean lines. No cracks. No signs of collapse. This place had held. For years. Maybe longer. She walked forward slowly, each step measured. The beam landed on a row of metal containers stacked neatly against the far wall. Old. Military green. Faded. But intact. Evelyn crouched down beside one, ran her hand across the surface. Dust came away on her fingers. But the metal beneath was solid. Preserved. She pulled her hand back slowly. "What is this?" she whispered. Rusty moved ahead slightly, then stopped. His body angled toward the far end of the room. Evelyn followed his gaze. There was more. The flashlight beam reached just far enough to catch the outline of something larger. A structure within the structure. A reinforced section. Thicker walls. A sealed door. Her breath caught. This wasn't storage alone. This was something planned, hidden, protected. Rusty stepped closer to it, carefully. His movements slow, deliberate. He sniffed along the edge of the door, then paused. Evelyn stepped up beside him. The door was metal, heavier than the hatch above. No handle on the outside, only a recessed latch. She didn't touch it. Not yet. Her heart beat slower now. Not racing. Settling. Understanding, piece by piece. "This wasn't forgotten," she said quietly. It was left. Rusty turned his head toward her, just for a moment, then back to the door. Evelyn straightened slowly, her flashlight lowering slightly. She looked back toward the stairs, the thin strip of daylight above. then back into the room. At the shelves, the containers, the structure, everything intact, everything waiting. She took a step back, then another. Not retreating, just creating space, letting it settle. Rusty stayed where he was for a moment longer. Then he turned and walked back toward her, close again, steady. Evelyn let out a slow breath. "We're not alone down here," she murmured. Not meaning people, not meaning anything alive. Just presence, purpose, history. She turned toward the stairs. "Let's go back up," she said. Rusty followed without hesitation. They climbed slowly, step by step. The light above grew brighter with each movement. The air warmed again, until finally, they emerged, back into the open. Evelyn stood beside the hatch, her hand resting on the edge. The wind moved lightly across the lot again. The same broken walls, the same weeds, the same silence. But nothing felt the same anymore. She looked down at the opening one more time, then at Rusty. He sat beside her now, calm, no longer searching, no longer waiting. Just there. Evelyn nodded once. "They didn't know," she said softly. "The people at the auction, the ones who laughed, the ones who walked away." She looked out over the empty lot, then back at the hatch. They had no idea. Rusty's tail moved once against the ground. Evelyn reached down, resting her hand against his head. "You did," she said, and this time, there was no doubt in her voice. Evelyn didn't close the hatch completely. She lowered it partway, enough to cover the opening, enough to keep anything from falling in. But she left a narrow gap along the edge. She wanted to remember exactly where it was. Not by guess, by sight. Rusty watched her as she worked. His posture relaxed now, the tension gone from his shoulders. He sat beside her, calm in a way he hadn't been since they first stepped onto the lot, like the searching was over. Evelyn stood still for a moment, looking out across the broken ground, the same place, but not the same anymore. Then she picked up her bag. "We need to tell someone," she said quietly. Rusty stood, no hesitation. The walk back felt shorter, or maybe her steps were just quicker. The town looked different this time, not because anything had changed, but because she was looking at it from the other side of something she hadn't known existed. The old factory, the empty storefronts, the quiet streets, all of it still worn, still tired. But now it felt like it was sitting on top of things people didn't see. Evelyn didn't go back to the shelter first. She went straight to the small office building near the center of town. County Records. The sign hung slightly crooked above the door. Inside, the air smelled like paper and dust. A woman sat behind a counter, sorting through files. She looked up as Evelyn entered. "Yes?" Evelyn stepped forward slowly. "I bought a lot yesterday," she said. The woman nodded, already reaching for a clipboard. "Lot number 11. The woman flipped through a stack of papers. "Industrial site." "Outskirts," she said. "What about it?" Evelyn paused. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she didn't know how much to say. "There's something there," she said finally. The woman glanced up again, this time more directly. "What kind of something?" Evelyn held her gaze. "Something built," she said. "Underground." The room went quiet. The woman set her pen down slowly. "You mean like a basement?" Evelyn shook her head. "No." "A beat." "Not like that." By the afternoon, there were 3 people standing at the edge of the lot. 2 men, 1 woman, all from the county. They wore the kind of clothes that tried to look official without actually being formal. Button-down shirts, worn boots, clipboards in hand. Evelyn stood a few feet back, Rusty beside her, watching. The group moved toward the hatch carefully. One of the men crouched down, examining the partially closed cover. "Well, I'll be," he muttered. The woman stepped closer. "Did you open this?" she asked. Evelyn nodded. "Yes." "With what?" "A shovel and a metal rod." The man glanced up at her, surprised. "You did this alone?" Evelyn didn't answer that. She just watched. They opened the hatch fully this time, all the way. The cold air rose again, stronger now, noticeable even in the afternoon heat. The woman stepped back slightly. "Feels like a freezer down there," she said. One of the men turned on a flashlight and aimed it downward. The beam mobbed shots caught the steps, the walls, the structure. He didn't say anything at first. "Then call this in," he said quietly. Things moved faster after that. By the next morning, more people had come. Different ones. Not county workers this time. Specialists. They spoke differently. Moved differently. More careful. More deliberate. They brought equipment. Lights. Cameras. They descended into the structure one by one, documenting everything. Evelyn stayed above. She didn't need to go down again. Not yet. She watched from the edge. Rusty sat beside her, calm, his gaze shifting between the people and the open hatch. Hours passed. No one rushed. No one laughed. The tone had changed. Completely. Late in the afternoon, one of the men climbed back up. He removed his gloves slowly, his expression focused. "Ma'am," he said, looking at Evelyn. She stepped forward. "Yes?" He glanced back toward the opening, then back at her. "This isn't just storage," he said. "What is it?" she asked. He hesitated, choosing his words. "It looks like an old Cold War-era bunker," he said finally. "Possibly part of a network that was never fully documented." Evelyn felt the words settle. Heavy. Real. "Is it valuable?" she asked. The man gave a small, humorless smile. "Very." By the end of the week, the lot wasn't empty anymore. Temporary fencing went up. Signs appeared. Vehicles came and went. People took notes, measured, documented. The broken place at the edge of town became something else entirely. Evelyn stood near the entrance one morning, watching as another group arrived. Rusty sat beside her, still, steady. A car pulled up near the fence. New, clean, out of place. The door opened. A man stepped out. Well-dressed. Careful movements. Evelyn didn't recognize him at first. Then she did. Daniel. He walked toward her, his expression controlled, but his eyes sharper than before. "Aunt Evelyn," he said. Her name sounded different in his voice now. Measured. Interested. She didn't move. Rusty stood slowly. Not aggressive, but present. Daniel's eyes flicked down briefly to the dog, then back up. "I heard about the property," he said. Evelyn nodded once. "Yes." He looked past her, toward the activity on the lot. "Seems like there's been a development." Evelyn followed his gaze for a moment, then looked back at him. "There has." Daniel took a step closer. "We should talk," he said. There may be some legal questions about ownership. The words came out smooth, practiced, like before. But this time, they didn't land the same way. Evelyn's posture didn't shift. Her hands didn't tighten. She simply stood there. Looking at him. "No," she said. "Just that." Daniel blinked. "I'm just trying to help," he added quickly. Evelyn shook her head slightly. "You already did." The silence that followed was different from the one in the house, different from the one in the shelter. This one held weight. Daniel glanced around again, as if expecting someone else to step in. No one did. Rusty remained at Evelyn's side, still, unmoving. Daniel adjusted his jacket. "Well," he said, forcing a small smile, "we'll figure it out." Evelyn didn't respond. He waited a moment longer, then turned and walked back to his car. The engine started. The car pulled away. And just like that, he was gone. Again. Evelyn stood there, watching the empty road for a few seconds after. Then she looked back at the lot, at the people working, at the open hatch, at the place that had changed everything. Rusty sat beside her once more, calm, no longer searching, no longer waiting. Evelyn reached down, resting her hand against his head. This time, she said quietly, "It stays." And she didn't need to say anything else, because now it was hers. The change didn't happen all at once. It came in small, steady pieces. First, the fence, temporary at first, metal posts and mesh, just enough to mark the boundary. Then something stronger replaced it. Clean lines. A gate that closed properly. A sign bolted into place with clear lettering no one could ignore. Authorized Citino entry without permission. Evelyn stood outside it the first morning it was finished. The same ground, the same sky. But now it held a shape, a presence. Rusty stood beside her, his tail moving once, slow and quiet. He didn't watch the road anymore. He watched the gate. The shelter was no longer where she slept. That changed sooner than she expected. A small trailer arrived first, parked just beyond the fence. Temporary housing, they called it. Just until something more permanent could be arranged. Evelyn didn't argue, didn't ask for more. The trailer smelled faintly of new plastic and fresh paint. The bed was narrow but firm. The window looked out toward the lot, toward the place. That mattered. Rusty walked through it once, sniffed every corner, then lay down by the door, satisfied. The days filled differently now, not empty, not waiting. People came early, left late. Voices carried across the lot, measured, focused, purposeful. They spoke to Evelyn directly, asked questions, listened to her answers. Not rushed, not dismissive. Respectful. It took her a few days to notice that difference, a few more to accept it. She learned the names slowly. Dr. Harris, the one who explained things in plain language, never talking over her. Megan, the woman who handled documentation, always careful, always precise. Others came and went, but Evelyn stayed, always. Rusty stayed closer now than before, not because he needed to search, because this was where he belonged. Weeks passed. The trailer was replaced, not with anything large, just a small structure, simple. Wood frame, 2 rooms, a porch that faced the lot. Evelyn stood inside it the first day it was finished, her hand resting lightly on the doorframe. "It's enough," she said quietly. No one argued. They understood. Rusty stepped in beside her, his nails clicking softly against the new floor. He moved through the space once, then settled near the doorway. Same place, same habit. But this time, it wasn't a place they were passing through. Mornings became something else. Evelyn woke before the workers arrived, before the trucks, before the sound of voices. She made coffee on a small stove near the window, sat on the porch with the cup in her hands. The air was different here. Still, but not empty. The ground beneath her held something now. Not just the bunker, not just the discovery. Something steadier, something that didn't move. Rusty lay at her feet, his head resting on his paws. He didn't lift it at every sound anymore, didn't track every movement. He knew this place. He trusted it. People came to see it. Not crowds. Not yet. But enough. Officials. Researchers. Occasionally someone from town who had heard about it. They stood at the fence at first, then closer, then inside. Evelyn guided them when needed. Not with speeches, just simple words. "It's down there," she would say. And that was enough. Rusty followed quietly, never leading now, just staying close. One afternoon, she stood near the hatch again. It was secured now, properly reinforced. Lights installed below. Everything organized, documented. But the feeling hadn't changed. Evelyn placed her hand lightly on the edge, felt the difference again, above and below. Rusty stood beside her, still, present. "You knew," she said softly. He didn't move, but his tail brushed once against the ground. The town spoke differently about her now. Not loudly, not all at once. But it spread. The woman who bought the worst lot. The one no one wanted. The one that turned into something else. Evelyn didn't go looking for those words. But she heard them. Sometimes in passing. Sometimes directly. She didn't correct anyone. Didn't explain. She just nodded. And went back to what needed doing. The days settled into a rhythm. Not the kind that drags. The kind that fits: work, rest, quiet mornings, steady afternoons, evenings that stretched longer than they used to. Evelyn sat on the porch one night as the sun lowered behind the broken edge of town. The sky turned a soft orange, then deeper, then dim. Rusty lay beside her, breathing slow, steady. She held her cup in both hands, empty now, but warm. The fence stood where it should. The sign caught the last bit of light. The ground beneath it, silent again, but not forgotten. Evelyn looked out across it, not searching, not questioning, just seeing. For the first time in a long time, she didn't feel like she was waiting for something to happen. She was already there. She reached down, resting her hand on Rusty's head. His fur was warm, familiar, real. "What I thought was the end," she said quietly, her voice almost lost in the evening air. She paused, not because she didn't know the words, because she wanted to feel them. Then she finished. "Was just where I was supposed to be." Rusty didn't move, but he stayed. And that was enough. The light faded slowly. The town settled, and Evelyn sat there, exactly where she needed to be, without doubt, without hurry. Finally home. Evelyn sat there a long time after the light was gone. The ground had gone quiet again. No voices, no footsteps, just the soft night settling over everything. She looked out at the place where Rusty had stopped that first day, the spot everyone else would have walked past without a second thought. He hadn't barked, hadn't dug wildly. He had just stayed.
Just take something she couldn't see yet. Evelyn let out a slow breath, her hands resting on his head. All her life, she had listened to people sigh where they pointed, follow that makes sense at the time. And still she lost everything. But here, it wasn't logic that brought her back. It was the quiet pause, a dog that refused to move, a play that didn't sound right, even when it looked fine. Rusty shifted slightly beside her, his tail resting once against the boat. Evelyn smiled, just a little, not because everything had worked out, but because she hadn't walked away, because something in her had stayed long enough to notice. She looked out into the dark one more time, then down at him. "If you hadn't stopped there," she said softly. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't need to. "So tell me, how many times have you stepped over something in your own life just because I didn't look like anything worth stopping for?"